book drop experiment.
The goal of our experiment was to investigate if diffusion of responsibility is present in scenarios that require help from others. The diffusion of responsibility is a concept which states people are less likely to take action or be responsible when others are present. So in this instance, it means that people might not help others if others are around, as they would believe they don't need to be responsible for providing help because others are there to pick up the responsibility and therefore help.
For our investigation, we wanted to investigate the concept of diffusion of responsibility by testing out who would be more likely to help, friends or strangers. Those are the two variables we tested.
For our experiment, we carried out 30 trials. 15 trials, our test subjects were friends that were located in Singapore American School, and for the other 15, the test subjects were strangers, individuals we found around Singapore.
To investigate and find out results for which group would be more likely to help, we did it through the book drop experiment, which was where we dropped 3 books and watched to see if anyone would come to our aid and help us pick up the books.
Our prediction for the outcome of the experiment was that friends would turn out to be more helpful than strangers, as individuals may also be more likely to seek help from friends than from strangers, because they believe friends are more obligated to provide help than are strangers. Another concept written by E. Gary Shapiro, PhD, also illustrates the idea that friends compared to strangers give more aid due to the fact that they would be duty-bound more than a stranger, a person you have met for the first time would.
We believe that this would be the outcome of the experiment, as friends would be more guilt-induced and carry more responsibility to provide aid, as they are the people that we encounter every day, whereas strangers won't feel the same pressure as they are just people that we happened upon for the first time. Again, our idea can be seen in another paper written by Jennifer Katz. Within it, she mentioned the belief that friends will offer more help than strangers because they will have more personal responsibility to help and more empathetic concern than the potential victim was a friend. This reflects a similar idea we had. Friends carried a bigger burden of responsibility than strangers did.
For our experiment, we set up a scenario with one of the 2 people in our group, dropping the 3 books in front of either a friend, someone we are close with and see every day, or a stranger that we have spotted for the first time around Singapore. One of the 2 in our group dropped the 3 books always, to keep the test fair, as the appearance of an individual can impact decisions people would make. We dropped the books around an individual, either a friend or a stranger. There were no other people near them to impact the decisions they would make. The individual being tested was not aware that they were being experimented on, so it did not influence their decisions. When the dropper dropped the books, she made sure the books were dropped in the person's eyesight and waited for a while to see if the individual would help pick the books up, seeing if they would help her. We recorded if each stranger or friend helped pick the books up or decided to ignore it.
From our experiment that we observed in Singapore, 10 strangers out of 15 helped out. For the other variable we were testing, the results were that 9 friends out of 15 helped by picking up the books that we dropped.
Both of the variables we tested produced the same outcome of more people helping in each group, but also overall the amount of strangers that helped compared to the amount of friends that helped was 66.6% and 60% respectively, showing it was an equal amount of aid that was received from each group.
The sample size of our experiment was 30 participants, which we recognize as too small to make a definite and precise conclusion from. Also, other factors affected our results and therefore could have altered our decisions. These factors include the location the experiment was conducted, as had it not been in a school environment or a crowded place, there may have been a decrease in the number of individuals that helped, or an increase.
The diffusion of responsibility concept is connected to this experiment we conducted, as we tested the likeliness of each group helping when books were dropped. We predicted that friends would be obliged to help more than strangers would, as strangers would be more likely to turn to the diffusion of responsibility concept, as they won't have as big of a burden of responsibility when giving aid to someone they have never met or will ever know compared to a burden a friend would have.
The way we can add to the field is through the results of our experiment. Though they did not reflect what we expected or what was already stated in the field, we found out that strangers and friends were both fairly likely to give help. It showed that equally, friends located in Singapore American School and strangers around Singapore were more than happy to show kindness to an individual who dropped their books near them. However, our results are only applicable to certain parts of a country. Rather than the world, the statement that strangers are dangerous might be prominent in other parts of the world, but it shouldn't be one that defines Singapore, which is seen through our findings in this experiment.
Now, after looking at our results and how we added to the field, the way we can use what we just learned is by changing the perceptions perceptions we have of strangers. As young kids, we are constantly told not to talk or to encounter strangers. We saw strangers as the antagonists of our lives. And while we are not saying that we should put our complete trust in a stranger, we are saying that we should not only hear one perception of strangers, we should be told and be aware that strangers are helpful. But as said above, this idea has been based and created upon an experiment that was done in Singapore, which is a small sample size. Therefore, saying it may not be helpful to all areas of the world. We should be aware that there is not only one story about strangers, there is another, one where they are helpful and as helpful as friends are.